Welcome everybody to the Chess Lab. This is the recap of my tournament, the Championship of Trentino, which is the region I live in, or the province I should say. I don't know where I live. So let's just start with this game. This was first round. I'm playing against a 1600. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but basically FIDE updated. No, I'm not talking about Chess 2.0, that would be a little bit too crazy. But basically, they realized that after the pandemic especially, players that are rated around 1400, 1500, they're actually much stronger. And so they basically gave points to everyone. From 2000 to below, progressively they gave more points. So if you are a 1900, they gave you, I don't know, 20 points. If you are an 1800, they give you 50 points. If you are a 1700, 100 points. And so basically I started this tournament as a 1917. So my FIDE rating is 1917 because FIDE updated for everyone. And so, okay, that's pretty cool. So my opponent is a 1600, I'm a 1917. Okay, so d4 by my opponent, and this is e4. So, you know, it has been 7 years I started to play chess, but I still don't know my coordinates. That never will change. So d4, I played d5, because that's what I do. Bishop f4, the London system, and here I played knight f6. My opponent played e3, and here you can play many things, but I decided to play c5. Knight to f3 by my opponent, knight to c6, c3, and here is not that I knew the moves necessarily, but and of course I have the London system from the black perspective in my opening database, which I will leave the link in the description below. Is a Lichess study, but I didn't remember that. Instead I remembered a video that I see of Grandmaster Pepe Gensa, and he basically said you play e6, you play bishop d6, you play queen c7, and you basically fight for the control of the e5 square. That's basically the meta there. Okay, so my opponent plays bishop d3, I play bishop d6, because again, that's what you do. And here, bishop to g3, I guess, is the main line. Or if you really want, you can even take. Why not? Arguing that maybe black's bishop is not so great, the light square bishop. But my opponent played knight to e5, and that's already a little bit of a strategical inaccuracy. And the reason is, after knight to e5, white loses the fight for the e5 square. Now, already a move like queen c7 kinda exploit that. If the knight was on d2, white could reinforce it with knight to f3. It's still not very good because there is knight to d7 here, and the pressure on e5 is just massive. But here I just took. And I checked with the engine, it looks like this is best. I was debating with a friend of mine whether taking first or taking here or queen c7 were the best, but you know, if you turn on the engine, it looks like bishop takes e5 is best. I don't know if you can rely on this engine though, so bishop takes e5, that's what I played. D takes e5, and my idea was very simple, just knight d7. And now this pawn will be very, very difficult to defend. Now, you can defend the pawn in a variety of ways, actually, but all of these ways are not ideal. And in general, white has a slightly, you know, compromised pawn structure. Now, strategically, it may seem like white will have a great time attacking on the king side, but I'm not gonna castle king side. That's the point. I'm going to do something else. My opponent played bishop to b5. That's a way to defend the pawn, because if I take with the knight, well, all of a sudden it just takes back and the other knight is pinned. If I take with this knight, again, it takes back and this knight is pinned. And if I attack the bishop, he just takes with check and then he saves this other, and he doesn't even have to save it, he can just take everywhere. And it's just up a piece. So here I played queen b6, lining up with the bishop and the pawn. He played bishop takes c6 check, removing one of the attackers. So now this pawn at the moment is not hanging. And here I could have played b takes c6. According to me and my opponent, queen takes b2 doesn't work, because he can take with check and then just escape with a knight. So here I either play b takes c6 or queen takes c6. Now I don't know what the engine says, because I literally put the moves in, but I will do the analysis here with you now. Yeah, it turns out b takes c6 is slightly better for black, queen takes c6 is slightly better for white. So probably the engine will say that this is an inaccuracy, quite most likely. But my idea was, again, very simple. I want to play b6, bishop b7, and create massive pressure on the g2 pawn. And of course the engine doesn't like that, but I don't like the engine, so we are equal. With the engine in the position, white is slightly better. So queen g4, logical, attacks the weakness. And here I played g6. I was debating whether rook g8 or g6. I end up deciding on g6 because you never know, maybe I steal short castle. I don't know. My opponent short castled himself. I played b6, knight to d2, bishop to b7, and here, yeah, white has a good position actually according to the engine. Here my opponent played a4. Here I long castled. I'm curious because I don't want a spoiler, but I just realized that there are the results. So spoiler is basically how this video should be titled. I just realized that now, my apologies for that, but okay, I won this game, so I'm like, it's +1. And me and my opponent, because of the result and because what you are about to see, we were convinced that this is like all good for black. Turns out it's not at all. But we were totally disaligned with that evaluation of the position. So that's very interesting. I keep the engine turned on because I want to see where white went wrong. He played b4, and again, I'm looking at the moves. This looks good. Maybe a5 was slightly more precise. Okay, whatever. b4, it's fine. Here I played h6, and I played h6 because I wanted to start advancing on the side of the board. And there was a guy analyzing with us after the game, and he proposed this move h3, because if he does nothing, I'm going to play g5, he goes back, I'm going to play h5. If he moves the queen, I trap the bishop. So he has to take, but then I played, let's say, rook to g8, he has to move the queen. I'm not sure where, let's say here, but then I attack the queen again, and it's trouble, because then I push, I may threaten mate, and there may be ideas of sacrificing the rook for the bishop, or keep pushing the pawns to deflect the queen. There are crazy ideas. And so this guy was like, I mean, just play h3, right? So you don't have to worry too much about that. And it seems like he's best. And here, yes, rook h to g8, g5, but looks like here white is doing all right. Well, let's keep it open, because I think that's the moment where he went wrong. He played b5, which is not ultra precise, but after queen c7 this is still fine. But here he played queen e2. Yeah, that's where I feel it's not very good. Yeah, I had a feeling here that that was not the right way to go, but I couldn't quite sense exactly why. And so it turns out the engine is just very cold-blooded. Just play h3, the bishop hides back, and that's fine. But in general, you know, the h-pawn also stops the h-pawn for black. And here I just captured, which may not be the most precise, but already the evaluation goes from +1 to plus 0.1. That's basically equal all of a sudden. And after knight f3, here we go, yeah. These two moves, queen to e2, allow me to take the pawn, and then knight to f3. This is where black now it's better. And the reason why black is better is that after take, this comes with tempo. Queen takes f3. It looks like, you know, I have to move the queen away, and then he will play a5 and he will crush me. The problem is that here I have e5, and that's just brutal. This is obviously defended, the bishop is under attack, and I keep winning tempi. After bishop g3, I played f5. f5 is a very strong move, because it forces the queen to stay there. If you move the queen, let's say, to e2, after f4, which by the way is the best move according to the engine, after f4 the bishop is trapped. Now, because of this reason, seeing the game he played h3, proving that playing previously was just h3, you have to play it eventually, right? And that was the guy that was analyzing with us, it was his argument, right? You have to play h3 anyways, so just play it. And yeah, apparently that was best. He played h3, which is even worse now. It was okay before. If he plays queen to e2, the engine is recommending rook h to e8, which, I mean, it makes perfect sense, but I thought that f4 just wins a piece. Turns out it doesn't. Wow. I'm quite shocked, actually. So he takes f4. I take. What happens? Oh, we both miss queen g4, check. Oh, I looked at this, but this doesn't work. So queen g4, of course, picks up the pawn. It probably just straight up wins the game. Yeah, it does. If I go here, this picks up the exchange after rook d6. And something more, maybe. Absolutely unbelievable. We both missed queen g4. Crazy. And in the analysis, we didn't look at it at all. Wow. Yeah, totally overlooked. Hopefully I wouldn't have played that. Wow, I'm scared now. Because what we saw is that after bishop to h4 there is g5. That's what we saw, and this in fact is losing. We totally missed queen g4. Wow. Yeah, that's why analyzing with the engine is just depressing. Like, the engine finds everything and you're like, I'm not really strong as I thought I was. Not that I really thought it, but you know what I mean. So anyways, my opponent, because of this, played h3, but at this point is a little bit too slow. Here I have d4, and now I will deactivate the engine, because, you know, life is tough already without it. And after e4, white is just crushed, because I'm attacking the queen. Funnily enough, the queen cannot stay on this king side, the queen has to go back. If the queen goes to d1, there are discoveries, and I just wins everything, and I can support everything that I win. And so he went to e2. This obviously allows d3. Now this is a passed pawn, and it will be soon a protected passed pawn. He went to d2. This is one of the rare cases where stopping the pawn with the queen is actually okay, because I have no knight or dark square bishops or ways to infiltrate with the rooks here. So the piece that is blocking the pawn, even though it's the queen, is very hard to attack, so that's kind of alright. And here I just played g5. Here I just kept going, because even though this doesn't necessarily win the bishop anymore, it still put the bishop in jail, and then I can just continue crushing through this king. Because this king, it may look safe now, but all it takes is a couple of pieces here, a couple of pushes here, and this is checkmated, because all of my pieces are looking there. And my king is surprisingly safe. Here my opponent plays c4, which perhaps makes my king even safer, but the idea is that now I cannot play c4 anymore to support this pawn, because if I'm able to get a protected passed pawn, that's trouble. I cannot play e4 to create the protected passed pawn, because I hang the queen, and he's ready to play rook a3, rook takes d3. So c4 is actually a very logical move. Unfortunately, it just closes down this queen side even more, meaning this king will be very safe, even here, and this king won't be. Here I want to move away from this diagonal, this pin, and so I played queen g7, which is a very nice move because it keeps defends the pawn, it supports the expansion on the king side, it looks at the king indirectly, and the g2 square indirectly, very important. For example, here I'm already threatening f4, takes, the bishop has to go back, checkmate. And if you don't go back with the bishop, I take the bishop and I win the game. So there is a big threat here. He has to close down this diagonal somehow, and so he played f3. Not only literally closing down the diagonal, but also allowing the queen to look at the pawn. So here I played h5. He played king f2, trying to escape. I'm not even going to try to argue whether or not these moves are precise or not. It's just a very complex position. Black, I guess, is crashing. I don't know. Let's see the evaluation. Yeah, black is crashing, so no matter what happens, is pretty brutal. And I'm just gonna go through the moves, but first I take a sip of water. I'm about to finish this water, and this video is gonna be very long, so I may have to take some more water later. Anyways, so h4. I could have played g4 immediately, but I didn't like it. Why? Why didn't I like that? There are some ideas where it closes down, and if I take here and I play the rook g8, it looks crashing, but he has rook to g1, and it's not so immediate to find a way to crash through. I'm sure there is in every variation, but I prefer to play h4, so after g4 he cannot just advance, and I will crash through a way or another, creating more problems. Bishop h2, and in general, you see, even though I cannot, let's say, crash through, now in this position I can crash through, but even if I couldn't, this bishop is not super active, because yes, if this pawn wasn't there, that bishop would be good, but the pawn is there, so g4, And here, you know, I'm threatening the fork. If he opens up everything, then I'm crushing here, and I'm about to push here, and the rook here. It's just totally destruction. So he tried king to e1, but the negative aspect of king to e1 is that now the rook on a1 is undefended. And now that I think about it, I could have played e4 immediately, and then just straight up win a pawn and just crush through the position. But the way I played it, I like it a little bit more. g3, bishop g1, and now the bishop is not here, because you never know, you know, this bishop in conjunction with a5 can be annoying. And then all of a sudden I'm in trouble. But now the bishop is totally dead, and here I played e4. And previously I didn't want to play e4 because white simply has f4, but here if you play f4 you just hang the rook. Like, this is an attack to the rook. And so I'm also fixating this pawn, meaning this bishop is literally dead. Like, he already lost a piece. Because if you take this bishop and you bring him out of the board, it's the same thing. So I'm up a piece here. And yeah, the evaluation confirms. So he played rook b1, he had to save the rook. Maybe rook a3 was slightly more accurate, maybe. The problem is that rook a3 doesn't come with tempo immediately, but after rook to b1, I'm able to play e takes f3 a little bit more hurt lightly. How do you say that? I don't know, but you know what I mean. Because now there is no rook takes a3 in any line. I'm threatening fork, I'm threatening to take, I'm threatening everything, so he has to take. If he takes with the rook, I can just win the exchange and he has no counterplay really, so he took with the pawn, but now I played g2, he played rook f2, and here it looks like I have to defend the pawn, but no, I have this move queen g3, I of course saw all of this, and now the bishop can't move, the rook can't move because it's pinned, the king, I mean, you can move it, but I don't know why would you do that. No, you can actually not move it, because then I take with check with tempo, and then I infiltrate to e2, or I just go back defending this pawn, why not? And I have just very simple plans, like queen takes, queen back, and just pushing this pawn. Very simple plans. Or rook to e8, pushing, and just crashing. It's just is crashing. My opponent tried rook b3, that's a logical attempt, trying to at least win this pawn. But here I just played bishop takes f3. My opponent played rook takes d3, and I saw, of course, that he could capture, but my idea was to play bishop e4, and this is a very nefarious move. I don't know what nefarious means, but I think it's logical to use it here, because the rook is actually pinned, and so you cannot just move here. You have to take. For a second I was a little bit concerned of rook d6, but then I noticed that the queen also looked at it, so that was pretty cool. I didn't notice the queen initially, but thankfully is here. So he has to take, but the problem is that after I take back, this queen is in trouble and you can't even move the queen away. Like, I thought about queen to b2 initially, but then I realized it's just losing, because I have queen takes e3 with check, and if he stops with the rook is mate, if he stops with the queen is mate. So he has to keep guarding this pawn, so he played queen to e2, again, logical, but the position is already lost. I played rook d3 and he correctly resigned. There is nothing to be done here. I'm threatening rook takes e3, which simply wins the queen. He cannot move the king, very important to notice that. If he takes here, he has no counterplay, that's fine with me. And so the only move that you may consider, humanly speaking, is queen to h5, because you are trying to get counterplay and maybe perpetuals, maybe not even perpetual, but probably, yeah, perpetual, you get them, or at least you force my pieces to come back to defend. That's the point. But here there is queen takes e3 check. Now this king has nowhere to go. If you stop with the rook, this is checkmate. And if you stop with the queen, this is check, the king has nowhere to go, and now this is checkmate. So he correctly resigned. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. So that was the first game. I won. It's a little bit weird, because since I got this crazy jump in rating, I was 1870, but I lost 10 points in Bolzano, so I was probably 1850, and I just got to 1917. So now my 1900, that's strong. What? And so, you know, that's what I'm supposed to do when I play guys that are 1600s. Now, they are much stronger than 1600, that's just on paper. but that's how I'm supposed to play against them, I guess, just crushing them, which is not easy at all. But you know, what maybe I used to say, oh, that was such a great game for me, but now I have to be objective and be like, that's what I was supposed to do, which is a little bit scary, but yeah. Okay, so e4. That's the second game. My opponent is 1398, so you know, almost 1400. NC, not classified, that's how we say it in Italy. But this guy here was much, much stronger than this rating. All of these guys are stronger than the rating on paper, except me probably, which is amazing. But no, this guy was much, 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 much stronger than his rating. Now, c5, c3. So if you guys have been following the channel and the lives, you are very happy about this, because that's the Alapin. We have been studying the Alapin, and I got it in Bolzano. I managed to draw that winning game, whatever. But finally, we get it again, over the board. The Alapin, let's see how it behaves. d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, d4. If you have been following the channel, that's all standard stuff. Knight f6, knight f3, and here my opponent played indeed bishop g4, which is our favorite line. And after d takes c5, the link in the description, I will leave you the Licha study with the opening repertoire. You can find this line. Queen takes d1, check. And I mean, I got this on the board like 3 to 4 times online, and I've studied this very well, so I was super happy to see this actually over the board. This is one of the very, very rare occasions where it's like, well, first of all, let me click this button, I don't want to disappear into obscurity, but this is one of the very rare occasions where it's like, I studied something and I actually find it over the board. Unbelievable. So yeah, that's, you know, if you study a lot, eventually you get something your way. And yeah, here the main line goes e5, attacking the pawn and threatening to just win the knight. But here you are in time to defend, because after e4 you have h3 counter-attacking the bishop. They go back, you attack, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and it's all a mess. But in the end, black gets some points here over to the king side, but this 4 against 2, the bottom line, is just too strong. But my opponent played bishop takes f3, which, you know, I get to keep the 3 against 4. This is unacceptable for black. This is really devastation. But okay, now playing e5 doesn't make much sense, because this pawn is not threatening any pinned piece. So he played e6, just attacking this pawn, logical. I played b4, he played g6. You may be a little bit surprised by these moves, but they are very typical. You play e6 to attack the pawn, and then you play g6 to develop this bishop in fianchetto. Here I played bishop b2, and my opponent after the game told me that, you know, bishop b2 is, when you see it the first time, is a little bit surprising, but we talked a lot about this opening, and so I just told him, you know, I just know it. So, and he agreed that it works, but I know it. So it's not, you know, fruits of my labor, let's put it this way. I mean, it is, but not over the board. So knight d2, and that's just how you develop the pieces in this opening. Then you put the king on c2, and eventually you will start, if allowed, to mobilize this pawn structure. If not allowed, you take your adequate measures, and then you eventually start to mobilize the pawns anyways, because there is no way that black can stop you really on the long term. He played knight d5, and here I have some trouble. He's threatening both to just win a pawn, because he's attacking it 2 times, he's just defended once, but he's also threatening this pawn here. So if I play rook c1, let's say knight takes b4, you know, just wins the pawn. So here I have king c2 that defends the bishop and the pawn, so everything is defended. This doesn't work because the bishop is defended, this doesn't work because the pawn is defended, and here he played king to e7. And you know, a move like king e7 show you that my opponent is not a 1400, as the papers say, you know? Because a 1400, he was a 1400, but not a real one. A real 1400 doesn't understand even that this is a problem. A 1400 is like, oh, double pawns, I'm better. It can't comprehend the position. But he played king e7 because rightfully he is saying, if the action is here, I want my king to be as close as possible. And that's the right way to think. Now, he's already objectively in an inferior line for black. But aside from that, king e7 is much more logical than short castle. And short castle is what a player rated his rating would have played. So that's why I'm saying he's stronger than his level. But clearly. So rook to d1. He played knight to d7. Knight c6, knight to d7. These are relatively minutiae. Here I play knight c4, not to go to d6 actually, but to prevent knight e5, which would have been, a little bit annoying. He played a5, starting to attack on this side of the board. I played a3. He captured. After the game, we discussed whether or not it was sensible to keep the tension. And by the way, if you're wondering why not knight takes, it's because of, I think knight takes, I don't even remember. I think knight takes c5. I think that's the reason you're not supposed to do that. Maybe I could have done it and I just missed it. A takes b4, the engine, of course. Oh no, but this is for black, sorry. Here. Knight takes a5, yeah, knight takes a5, there is knight takes c5, a3 is just best. Yeah, I haven't checked this game with the engine actually, so let's keep the engine turned on, but let's just do 2 lines, otherwise I get too confused. So here I played a3, looks like it's good. A takes b4, c takes b4, and now the structure is fixed. He captured the bishop, and it just works. It just does work. Now I have 3 pawns against 1. If I get to trade these 2 pawns, which will happen, I will have 2 connected passed pawns. He played rook h to c8. I played bishop to d3, threatening bishop e4, which is pretty logical. He played b6, and again, you see the engine already sacrificing a piece. That's the best move, is to sacrifice a piece, because that's how powerful this pawn majority is. It truly is crazy. And rook a to b8, which is quite passive, is just given as the second best, because the engine understands that this is nesting. Yeah, but he played b6. He is humanly probably the best move. Of course, the engine likes none of these moves, but it's what it is. Knight takes b6. It's fine. It's funny because here on the score sheet, I put down this is round 2. Where is round 2, bro? I put down on move 19. Knight d takes b6. Like, this helps, right? Knight d, one of these 2 knights takes b6. I should have written knight 7 or 5 takes b6. So I don't know which knight took with, because it doesn't matter, it transposes, but I think it took with this knight. I mean, it's the most logical option. I took back, and he took back. And again, it's like it's +3. Like, material is, I'm just up a pawn, but it's +3. And this is because this is just terrible. I play rook c1. I'm happy to see that I'm playing very precise. He played king d6, but the problem is this king can't quite make it. It can't quite make it. And even if we trade everything and the king is here, I can't just leave it here and just go grab all these pawns, because remember, the 2 pawns, you can't never take the pawn below because the other one is just too strong. You capture a set of rooks. I don't know. Wait, what? Why is not allowing me to? Oh! I capture a set of rook. I'm gone. I'm totally gone. Okay. Rook c8, king b3. He played knight d5. Okay, I'm really happy to see, bro. I'm playing precise chess. Wow, that's impressive. I guess when you know lines, that's easier. So he's threatening rook c3, but I have bishop c4, and yeah, he played knight to b6. I played rook c1, bro, playing very precise. I'm very happy to see that. He played king e5. He's trying to attack this bishop 3 times. He's just defended twice, so he's about to win the bishop, except I can ignore it because the king is not a good attacker. I just have a check. He has to go back, and now I win a tempo, moving the bishop away. The king again is cut off, and these 2 pawns are just so strong. So rook b8. Here I played b5. Okay, so this is a big moment. b5, the engine doesn't like b5 too much. Here I considered a5. And yeah, everything wins, but this move is very interesting, because here I was like, okay, let's say that he plays knight d5, attacking this pawn. I have to play b5, and then he plays knight c7. Now, I calculated that this was winning, but it was very tricky. For example, king c4, exactly, there is rook a8. I calculated correctly. You don't just take immediately, because then that's very good. You just win. But you play rook a8, and that's very tricky. Oh, and here you play b6. Now, in my mind, I wanted to play king c5. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, king b5, and I thought this was winning, but you know what I was afraid? That eventually black can sacrifice the rook for the pawn, and I don't know if black takes everything. I wasn't quite sure, but yeah, there is nothing. It was just in my head. No, I mean, I knew this was winning, I wasn't sure I was able to win it. Which, now that I look at it with my own eyes and not in my mind's eyes when I calculated, this is actually very easy. Like, white doesn't have to immediately go for the promotion. He can first grab a bunch of pawns and then go for the promotion. Black will sacrifice, and he will just totally crushing. But okay, you know, I thought about it a little bit, and eventually I played b5. After the knight moves, I have king c4. It's a little bit convoluted, but I managed to pass through. He attacked the rook, he attacked the pawn. This is another interesting moment. Here I thought about check, and then just pushing the pawn and winning. Then I thought about rook a1, which is sensible, because we are putting the rook behind the passed pawn after all. It's not such a crazy idea. But then I was like, wait, can I play rook d4? Because rook d4, you know, it prevents knight e2, which is huge. And the knight doesn't have where to go. The knight is borderline trapped. And it just works, because the bishop is controlling this important checking square. If black had rook c8, it would be winning, but I think rook d4 is best. Yeah, absolutely. And rook e1, yeah, you can play whatever, it's winning. And as you can see, the evaluation starts to be crazy. Rook d4, he played f5. The problem is that now I have f4. I didn't play f4 just to check the king. I played f4 because after the king goes back to f6, a very important source of counterplay he has is to push these pawns, but now I'm controlling those squares a little bit better. And here I just played king to c6. My opponent played knight to d5, not really attacking the pawn, so that's important to notice. And yeah, rook takes d5, I'm sure it's winning, but I was like, let's just chill. I just played a5. Like, there is no need to be fancy. I just won a game on the first round. That was the first round. This was the morning of the second day. And I just want to win this game. Like, this guy is lower rated, but he's very strong. You just don't want to give him like an exchange for free. It's easy to win after you give the exchange away, because you have two pawns. So even if he sacrifices for one, you have the other. But I was just play a5. It's just the simplest. He played rook d8, and here he's threatening not this, because I just take it, but he's threatening check, right? And then he picks up my rook, but I played b6 anyways, because there's nothing. He played knight e7, and here I played king c5, defending the rook. And here he played rook to b8. Now, it's funny, because here there is a line which I saw, which is rook takes, king takes, knight check, that's a fork. I saw this, king c5. Now, if the knight moves away, you have to take the pawn, right? But now I have king b5, and the knight cannot move back. And even here, so he has to go knight b3, but now I just push. He can give me a check, but now I go here, and that's it. For a moment it was plus 96, that's when you know that's pretty bad. So that's a very interesting line, and again, a 1400 doesn't see that. He didn't play knight e7 to win my rook. He played knight e7 to take my rook and give me the fork. And then he didn't do this because he saw all the variation I just showed you, and he saw it didn't work. Like, a 1400 doesn't calculate that, but he did. Again, stronger than his rating. So that's why I'm proud of this game. I played very, very well against an opponent that, you know, is at least, in my opinion, 1600, mid-1600, even higher. But it's because, for example, this opening, he totally didn't knew. And he entered in an inferior position right away. But if he starts to just study a little bit of the ideas and the lines, like he immediately just skyrockets his rating. So he played e5, I played rook to d6 check, king f7. Yeah, these moves, doesn't give justice to his rank because the position is just lost. King to e8, and here there is a trick. If I play king b6, there is a fork, right? Because this is spin, but I played it anyways because at this point it's okay to sacrifice the rook because it's literally like it's just crushing. He resigned here, rightfully so. If he check me, that's literally the only thing you can try, because if you do nothing, I'm just gonna go here. And I win the game. The rook is trapped, actually. So here if you check, I play king b7, he takes, I take, and here I saw that this was winning. And in the game, during the game, I saw that if you play d8, I just promote, and then eventually you can go after this pawn, but I will promote the other. Which, this is true. But what's funny is after rook to d8, I checked this with the engine actually, yeah, there is bishop b5, and the king is forced away and you win the rook. So here is not even a sacrifice of the rook, because after knight takes, e takes, the rook is actually trapped. So that's just insane. I just wanted to show you that because I think it's pretty cool. But okay, he resigned. That's right to resign here. Like that's literally like plus a billion. So the first two games of the tournament actually went really, really well. Of course, you can see the results, but whatever. This is game number 3 against the same guy that I played in Bolzano, and in that game I was winning, and then he managed to save himself with a draw, and that was a very painful game. The result is not that crazy, but the game is. So let's go. Let's see if we can have a rematch. Of course, you know that it didn't happen, but let's see how it happened. So knight f3, I played d5, d3, knight f6, knight b to d2, and you may be wondering, wait, what is white doing? That's a great question. Now I know, because he told me after the game, but here I have no idea. And here, okay, I can play the usual weird stuff with some reverse London or whatever, but here I was like, wait a second, let's play this classical chess, okay? Let's just play principal chess. And so I played knight c6 with the idea of playing e5. I don't know why the arrow just landed to e6. He played c3, I played e5, and I was literally smiling when I was playing these moves because I'm like, I'm playing real chess. I have no idea which opening is this. He clearly played this because he doesn't want to go into theoretical stuff, because he's like, this is a young dude, he's studying openings. I'm really not studying opening that crazy, but you never know. So I am studying openings, but not like insanely. But yeah, so we are just playing chess. That's the bottom line of it. e4, bishop e7, and this reminds me of a reversed Pierce, where white will play the classical setup, the quiet line, with bishop e2 and the knights out, with the strong center. But and after the game I told him that, it kind of reminds me of that, and he was like, after bishop e2, this is a reversed Philidor. If he played g3, bishop g2, that will be a reversed Pierce. But with bishop e2 is a reversed Philidor, and as soon as he said it, it made sense. But during the game, no idea what this was. But yeah, this is a reversed Philidor, so it's funny because, I don't study a single opening in depth, but I'm studying a lot of lines, and you find new lines every time. So yeah, I castled, he castled. I will go a little bit faster with the analysis because otherwise this lasts forever. And here, my opponent after the game told me, here I thought you want to play bishop e6, but then there is knight g5. So maybe h6, which also prevents the development of the dark square bishop, and then bishop e6. I also saw that, but then I'm like, okay, let's just fianchetto the bishop. Probably an inferior choice, but okay. Queen c2, bishop b7, rook e1. All logical moves, rook e8, a3, maybe going for b4. When in doubt, I played a5. He was happy to see a5 because, I'm creating some weaknesses maybe on b5. I'm just pushing my pawns a little bit too far. Yeah, it's kind of okay. b3, bishop f8, opening up this rook. He played bishop b2. I play queen d6. Yeah, this is potentially not the best move ever, because after take, the knight may attack my queen, so maybe queen e7 was better, or something else. Now b4, here there may be some ideas of playing b5, and then I may have some problems in the center. So I was like, let's move my knight when I decide to move it, knight e7, to reroute it to g6, and then also opening up the bishop. The bishop goes to f1, knight g6, g3, to prevent knight to f4. This is not a weakening move because you have the light square bishop here. You can always play bishop g2 if you want. And now I played c6. My opponent didn't really like my move here, but I don't know, I kind of like c6. Let's see what the engine thinks. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do at all. I wanted to do this. So yeah, it turns out he's right. c6 is not really even in the top 5. Yeah. And he told me about queen c6, which is among the bests. Which makes sense, you are creating this alignment here, but yeah, I played c6. I'm surprised to see the evaluation. Okay, now it's equal, because we thought that white was just better, quite considerably also, throughout the vast majority of the game. And in the end, you will see what happens, and I managed to draw. But yeah, apparently this is equal. I thought that here already white is clearly, not necessarily clearly better, but at least slightly. I'm expecting to see plus 0.5, 0.9, instead is 0. Okay, that's... But you know, the engine is the engine. He played queen b3, a4, queen c2. And here again, to prove you that I really thought I was a little bit maybe in trouble, I thought that I had to attack the king. And you do this when you think you are in trouble, so I played h5. But yeah, apparently, what is the engine saying? h6, but h6 doesn't have characteristics of the attack, it's just a consolidating move. Queen d7, queen c7, queen d8, queen e6. Yeah, queen d6 is really bad. The engine is like, take your queen and put it everywhere you want, but not on d6. Okay, that's pretty funny. But okay, basically passed the turn in a way. I played h5, which compromises a little bit the squares around my king. It pushes this pawn maybe a little bit too far. Then there is not really attack, and I knew that, but I'm like, let's just go. So rook a to d1, very, very sensible move. Like, when I was playing this game, I really liked white pieces. It's unbelievable that the engine thinks that this is equal. We both thought that this was better for white. Not maybe +1 and something, but plus 0 point something for sure. So I'm surprised to see that. But I play knight g4, this is bad. So yeah, going for the attack, since this is equal, is a little bit crazy. And here already d4 is strong, he played h3 first. And here knight f6 is best, I played knight h6. Yeah, and here I'm in trouble. And here I'm in trouble because after d4, the queen is misplaced, the knight is misplaced. You don't really know why this pawn is on h5 and not on h7. Like, all of these pieces are totally misplaced. And I have a pawn on a4, which actually is a problem, because if everything gets traded here in the center and I play rook takes, this pawn will just fall, and then he has the potential of creating a pass pawn here. So in the center, on the king side, on the queen side, I have problems everywhere. And here I played e takes d4. This is where I started to think that the game was over, because you see that before it was equal and now it's plus 1 point something, but in my mind before it was plus 0.5, 0.9, or, you know, I wasn't thinking in numbers like that, but you know what I mean. And now I thought it was just borderline winning here. I'm like, I genuinely was thinking probably the engine will save this for black, but this is lost. Like, humanly speaking, you cannot save this. And you may say, yeah, but it's equal, it's a draw in the end, right? Yeah, and you see why. So c takes d4, and here, yeah, my opponent after the game told me you cannot allow e5. When it comes to human play, that's absolutely correct. I agree with it 100%. But, you know, he proposed to take, but I was terrified by taking. because after knight takes e4, and the engine kind of agrees with me here, like it's too scary, but this proves why this knight is so misplaced. If the knight was here, at least I'm able to trade a couple of pieces. You know, this pawn is an isolated pawn in the end of the day. I may be able to consolidate a little bit, and maybe I'll make it out alive, maybe. Probably not, but if the knight was here, it would be a totally different game, like literally. But no, the knight was just randomly here on h6, and so I was too scared of allowing this activity of the pieces, like hitting my queen immediately, looking at these juicy squares, so scary. And so I played h4, trying to just go for it, just go crazy. I have a threat, I'm threatening to take. Of course, it's never gonna happen. If he take, I take, and all of a sudden his position is just ridiculous. And yeah, if he takes with the pawn, I just jump in, or even with the knight, and I create problems, and I have some counterplay. He, of course, played e5, and still white is clearly better here. I played the move queen to d7, perhaps not the most precise. Now my opponent's advantage is intensifying, but you can kind of see it. And my opponent told me after the game, again, this pawn is too much of a pain for black, and he's perfectly right. But you have to have the timing correct, and that's what happened in the game. That's what saved me. I barely made it out here. So this was just borderline. This is borderline lost, if not lost at all. I don't know +2 how would you define it, but that's bad for black for sure. He played knight g5, and knight g5 is a huge move because he's threatening e6. And the problem with e6 is that after that he will capture here, and then once I take back, it's not about that I lose the rook, it's that I lose this knight. And here queen f5 to release the tension is best. I managed to find h takes g3, and the reason why knight g5 here is not so good and g4 is best is because, again, after knight g5, black is actually in time to play h takes g3, because the move e6 doesn't work. Again, my opponent was really fixated with this idea, which is the right idea, but the problem is you have to play it at the right time. And for example, here he thought for a moment, but he didn't play, he played f takes g3, which of course creates some weaknesses around his king. That's why the engine doesn't really like knight g4 immediately, sorry, knight g5 immediately. If you play e6, now it turns out that, well, here you have g takes f2 check first, of course, and here what I thought was the move is queen d6. It turns out, which is the second best, it turns out queen d8 for whatever reason is better, because the idea is after queen d6, here knight d to f3 is best, which both me and my opponent didn't really consider. What we consider, keep in mind we are not here with the board, we are back here, so we are calculating in our mind. It's not so easy, very complex position. Here e takes f7 is wrong, because after knight takes f7, the queen defends the knight. That's why queen d6 we both consider it, right? This is very hard to visualize from here, and even here. That's after knight g5 I had to visualize this, and everything is fine. Very difficult, but we managed to visualize that. It turns out that here, after king takes f2, queen d8 is best, because after this, you take with a knight, and you are attacking this knight here. So if knight takes, you take defending the knight, and then you have queen f6, if anything. And if queen takes, you have queen takes g5. I actually saw this, but in a different move order, in a different line. So maybe I would have found it, I don't know. But insane. And don't ask me why queen d6 instead is inferior, because of course this is not best for white. But I don't know, super complex position. My opponent, by the way, is rated around 2050, so strong candidate master, but it's not about the rating itself, it's just, this guy is very experienced. He is, I mean, he was the coach of the strongest guy in my chess club, who is on his own a strong candidate master, so very experienced player, very strong. you know, not a young fella, but still a very, very sharp, very experienced. One of those old dudes that are still on the move, if you know what I mean. So yeah, here he played. I played h takes g3. I can get away with it. F takes g3, and here queen f5. At this point, since this pawn here, which can be a weakness sometimes, is gone, I'm like, okay, let's trade queens, because if I don't do it, I don't know what can happen. And just out of curiosity, I want to keep this open. I know what the evaluation is at the end of the game, and I'll talk a little bit about it. Now here he has to take, because I'm attacking the knight, I'm attacking the queen, he cannot avoid trading, so he traded. I took, and here I'm attacking the pawn, and so he played bishop to d3, which is best. And here bishop c8 is best, but here I played the knight takes g3. Now here it's funny because after knight takes g3, white has a very strong moves that doesn't work. But it's quite tricky to see that it doesn't work. And after a knight takes g3, white has another move that I think works, and after the game I proposed this move to my opponent, and we established that indeed it's better for white, and the engine agrees. After knight takes g3, there is rook e3, I don't know if you can see that, and this is better for white. But during the game I was like, I capture on g3 and I started to shake my head, right? And my opponent almost instantly played d6. But I was actually happy about this move. So I'm not saying that I bluffed by shaking my head. He probably didn't even notice. But you know, I just shake my head because maybe he was looking at me and he's like, okay, you know he's lost. And because e6 looks losing for black, but he's not. E6 is actually a mistake in this precise position. Better is to play rook to e3, and after that white is just slightly better, but the position is very tricky for black. And yeah, I actually planned to play knight to h5. During the analysis we talk about knight e4, but this just loses. I plan on knight h5, but yeah, rook e3 was just better. But yeah, he played e6, and here I have f5. f5 is a very difficult move to see. After the game, he was a little bit upset on himself, totally understandably, by the way, because he didn't see f5. But actually, f5 is very tricky to see for some reasons. It's just a move that you don't consider. I don't know, myself, I just saw it, you know, because I had to see it. Because if I don't see this move, I lose. And so for me, I had to find it. Like I had to force myself to look for something. And so I found f5. f5 now, because here, of course, there are a billion threats. He's threatening fork. And even if I move the rook, he's threatening to take. Then I have to move, and he just wins the knight. It looks totally crashing for white. But again, f5 saves everything. Because now I'm up a pawn, and this pawn is defended, very important, and I'm about to play knight e4, which kind of forks everything, so you have to take, and then I take back, and I have a protected pass pawn. I'm about to take this, I'm about to win the game all of a sudden. And so here I was shaking my head, because I don't know, I was kind of bluffing, I was kind of, to be honest, I didn't know what was going on. For what I know, this may be actually winning for white, I have no idea. But then he started to think and to think and to think, and this gave me confidence, because I'm like, okay, to me, that's all of a sudden better for black, but I'm not sure. But if he's thinking so much, it means I'm not seeing anything for him, he's not seeing anything for himself, so now it's two people that are not seeing anything, and this is giving me confidence. It's kind of giving me confirmation about what I'm thinking. And so I started to think that maybe rook f1 is the best move, because even if I take the rook, you know, he has a lot of counterplay over there, and I have to be careful. And he played rook f1 eventually. I had 19 minutes, he had 15, around that, I can't remember precisely, which in a long classical game is no time at all. Trust me, is no time at all. What do you mean? It's 20 minutes? No, bro, it's not time at all. And he offered the draw. Is the strongest player, just put a rook hanging, offer the draw, super complicated position, 19 minutes, you never know what can happen. I accepted the draw, knowing that if I turn on the engine, probably you will say that I'm better, because engines like material. Humans like activity, but engines like material. And in fact, as you can see from the evaluation, it's objectively speaking completely winning for me. But he told me the day after we met, and he's like, did you check it? No, you were actually winning in the end. But I'm like, yeah, but I would still take the draw, even knowing that for sure. And I asked him, and he was with another dude, another strong player. I asked them, was it an easy win or a difficult one? And they told me it was very difficult. And that's also something that the engine won't tell you. This is -3, but the engine won't tell you that this is a -3 where you have to find a sequence of extremely precise moves to actually bring it home. If you don't, you may actually completely turn the results around. So I'm very happy to have accepted the draw. This is one of those instances where I don't regret it a bit. And in this game, actually, except for these literally last 2 moves, it happened the same that it happened the other time. My opponent was winning at some point where he was pushing the pawns in the center, but eventually, because he missed this reply f5, it ended in a draw. So the first game we played, I was totally crashing, and he managed to save it. And in this game, he had a super strong initiative, borderline crashing, but he missed just a move, and that was just enough for me to turn things around, but not a lot of time, a complex position, and it ended in a draw. So this time I was able to save it, and more equal than that you cannot get it. But we'll play again, So, okay, now this 4th game, this is round 1 of the 3rd day, so this is the last day. My opponent is actually a FIDE master. You can see the name, you can look him up. Super strong player, super strong player. I was playing with the white pieces, I was very happy. I was fresh because for once in a lifetime I actually slept right that night, unbelievable. And so I opened with e4. He played c6. This game is super long, and we are already 57 minutes in. My apologies if I disappear into obscurity. Let's go over this game pretty quickly. You can see the result, but still, it's quite a crazy game. And I still haven't checked it with the engine. So d4, d5, f3, the fantasy. You know, guys, I'm preparing the fantasy. He played queen b6. In Bolzano, they played e5 against me. And the idea is to play bishop c5, queen b6, so I'm like, this is probably similar. And in the game in Bolzano, I kind of messed it up, but I learned that the best move is knight c3. So after queen b6, I play knight c3, because now if he pushed this and I take, this is now a transposition, and there is knight a4, where it's just crazy, but white is fine. So he played d takes c4, f takes c4, he played e5, this is all very logical, knight takes f3, e takes d4, and here is a very important moment. Do you take with the knight, or do you take with the queen, potentially going into an endgame? Well, it turns out that taking with the knight is better. My opponent told to me after the game, and he told me that. I took with the queen. Now, the idea is that after knight to d4, there is bishop c5, which scared me, but even in this position, there is knight a4. I thought you don't have knight a4 here, but it turns out you always have this knight a4 move. This is unbelievable. So let's actually check this with the engine and with the opening repertoire. So knight takes d4 is best, bishop c5, and here again knight to a4. And this is fine. This is fine for white. This is equally at best for black, right? So yeah, c3, and there's nothing. Of course, he cannot capture the knight because I just take the queen. I don't know why I'm always so hesitant to play this move, but he's just best. Now, while you guys look at this position and you admire it in all its craziness, that was ironic, of course, I'm gonna take some real water and I'll be back in a second. Yeah, because I don't have water here. Okay, I took the real deal here, the 1.5 liters. Okay. So, It's because I'm talking a lot that I have to drink so much, you know. But we didn't go into this really, which would have been fine. But I know it for the next time, you know, next time I play a FIDE master, which will be relatively, you know, it may not have to pass too much time. So e takes d4, I played queen takes d4 instead, and my idea is that if he plays bishop c5 here, I just win his rook, and so he cannot do that. Even if I get a check, I just step away. So he played knight d7 here, and now bishop c4, very logical. He traded queens, and the problem with this position, he told me that this isolated pawn is an issue for me. But this is how the game turned out. Knight e5, bishop to e2, it's important to control the g4 square. Knight f6, threatening this nasty move, so I played a3. Bishop to c5, bishop to e3. Now, I'm playing this move fast, but I was taking a long time here thinking. Because here, for example, there is knight g4, and if I move the bishop away, I lose the knight, but I have bishop g1, and then I will simply play h3, he has to go back, I long castle, and I'm totally fine. So here he played bishop to, well, here he played bishop to b6 because he wanted to sidestep from this bishop. And after h3, preventing a knight to jump in, he played bishop e6. And here I'm like, okay, cool, I just captured. He cannot really take here because I have a fork, and even if he moves the king, then he doesn't have counterplay. So he played f takes c6, and after bishop takes, pawn takes, and long castle, I'm like, I'm never gonna lose this, right? Like, it's impossible. I already burned so much more time than him, but, you know, strictly positionally speaking, how do you lose this? Because now he also has the isolated pawn. Now, he told me that this is slightly better for black. Turns out he was right. That's the first time I'm checking with the engine. And the point is that, yes, now we both have the isolated pawn, but it turns out that in this conformation of pieces, this is worse for white, and having the knight against the bishop is actually better for the guy that has the knight, which is him. And so here he played king to e7, as you can see. I'm very happy to see, whoa, that makes me proud, actually. Well, that actually really makes me proud. Wow, I found a4. I'm very happy. Back in the days, I would have never found a4 in a billion years. Here I identified that an idea that he could have is b5, so I played a4. I'm very happy that this is the best move. Wow, I am so happy, bro, that this is the best move. Now, let's go through this game relatively fast. So basically, these central considerations about the pawn are more strategical than anything. At the moment, there is nothing concrete. So let's just see how it goes. So he put the the rook on the open file. I consolidated the structure. He goes back. I challenge the rook. He does the same. I improve the king. There are no like good discoveries here because my idea is to go king e3. And these two squares from which my opponent can attack me are all controlled too well. Rook takes, knight f6 check, king to e3. It's behind the equal and slightly better for black. This shows you that the engine, yes, may say it's objectively equal, but has a slight preference for black, and this translates, humanly speaking, for a slightly improved position for black. h5, rook d1. Yeah, I'm very happy the way I played. The problem is that my opponent played tremendously. He's a FIDE master after all, and not, you know, he's not one of those FIDE masters that are like 8 years old and 2000. No, this guy is young, sharp, 2300, and much more than that. You can search in online again. So I'm super happy the way I'm playing. The problem is that I'm burning a lot of time. I can tell you how much time I had here. I had, what is it, move 25? I had 25 minutes and he had like around an hour, which again, 25 minutes, you may say, oh, it's a lot of time. It's not a lot of times in those games. That's the problem. I'm happy to see I'm playing, wow, knight b2 best move. I am playing such good chess, and here already maybe that's not super accurate, but the problem is that the time is ticking. And despite my resilience here, like 30 moves against a strong FIDE master, totally equal. Very proud of that. Look at that, rook d4, again, best move, trying to maybe get active here. If c5, this rook is questioning his life choices, you are giving me b5. He eventually will play it. So he played rook c5, just went back. There are ideas of trapping his rook, so he has to sidestep. I go back, hoping in a repetition. Of course he doesn't. C5, you finally have to give this concession, but sometimes you have to concede some things. This is not just blundering the rook, guys, it's defended. To move forward, rook d8, bishop e2, look at that. Cold-blooded, unbelievable, I'm playing so well. But it's just not enough. Look at that. We're shuffling around. You know, when you have much less time and the guy is super higher rated, like, you feel some pressure, you know what I mean? Yeah, and this I start to go wrong. Yeah, I just had to keep shuffling my rook back and forth. But I started to see ghosts. How much time do I have here on move 45? On move 45, let me tell you guys, move 45, I have 1 minute and 36 seconds. Yeah, that's, unfortunately, that's not gonna cut it. But no, but it's not that, you know, because you may say, oh, so you just lost because you didn't have a lot of time. It's not that. It's that my opponent, first of all, he knew the opening better than me. He found himself in a slightly better position. This forced me to think more. The position was complex. He entered in certain lines for a reason. Like, it was all a strategy. So as you can see, the strong player is not about just the single move. It's also about they set up a strategy because of their experience, their strength. So that's also a very instructive part of this game. So if I'm low on time, there is a reason for it. That's what I'm trying to say. So, and eventually it brings you to make some inaccuracies, which of course your opponent punishes. And funnily enough, this is not such a good move. And after the game, he told me that this wasn't, according to him, the most precise move. That's fascinating. Rook b1, knight e5. But if he managed to make an inaccuracy, I'm happy. The position was complex enough for a FIDE master to make an inaccuracy, you know. That's of course just a ridiculousness, but you know what I mean. Here I played bishop e2, that's fine. C takes, rook takes. Oh, here he went back. Yeah, rook takes a4 simplifies the position a little bit too much. I think that's correct in going back. I played rook b5. Where did I go wrong? So here I went wrong. So this endgame is just bad. I should have kept the rooks with rook b4. Yeah. Or bishop d1 even, just defending very cold-bloodedly these... Yeah, I should have just kept the rooks on the board. Because the knight is a good piece against the bishop, but is still inferior to a rook. So the rook is able to dominate the knight, of course. But after I trade, I improve his pawn structure. And here, eventually, you know, I just collapsed. Yeah, I noticed that he was analyzing this endgame like the day after. No, it's impossible the day after. That evening, okay. But... yeah, that just lost, as you can see. And here, yeah, that's the, you know, the position is lost, but, you know, it still requires some works. But here I played the final couple of mistakes. Here I'm looking at this knight. The knight can go back, right? So I'm like, oh, let's dominate the knight. The problem is much more important to prevent knight c4. And I failed to realize that with not so much time on the clock. Bishop d3 is better. Bishop b5, you know, is controlling both squares. That may be considered. I play bishop g4, allowing knight c4, and here I play bishop f5. Bishop f5 to me was the final mistake. I thought that this was the losing move. Turns out I was wrong. No matter what I do is losing. But bishop f5 simply allows knight e3, and I don't have a way to defend g2. And once this base of pawn chain falls, everything falls. Very instructive game, for sure. There's nothing to be done. Here I shuffled a little bit because I'm like, I know you're winning, we all know it, but, you know, just prove it. And of course he's able to prove it, but you don't just resign, right? You just continue. That's a nice move, g4. I saw it, of course. I saw all of this, but there's nothing to be done anymore. If you take, this pawn just pushes. There is no way to stop the pawn. The king is not quick enough. Even if I play this, no way for the bishop to get in time on the diagonal. If I take with the bishop, he takes, and again, there is no way to stop the pawn. So I went closer with the king. If he takes this pawn, of course, I just take with the bishop, and all of a sudden I have some chances, but he pushed, rightfully so. I went to c8. I tried to reroute my bishop on the other side. You will notice I didn't defend the pawn. There is no way, because he pushes g2. So he eventually played knight f4, and here I resigned. Why did I resign? Because this bishop is totally dominated by the knight, and after I pass there is g2, takes, 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 and then he wins here. Or then there is this, and if I take, he takes while defending the pawn, funnily enough, and he is up a piece, so I resign. That's a good way to, a good point to resign. So I'm very happy about the game, because I mean, I think that I put what I consider to be some nice resistance to such a strong player. He won the tournament 5 out of 5. Even stronger players than me were not able to have a chance. I think this may have been the most resilient game that he had in the tournament. I haven't seen the others, so that's just speculation, but I like to think that's the case. He had to find something. We played for like 4 hours. We were the last to finish by a lot, and I'm happy. I'm happy. This shows me that players at that level, FIDE Masters, like, yeah, they are of course much stronger than I am for many reasons, but they're not aliens. You know what I mean? And this is not a reference to the Alien Gambit. They are humans. They are humans. They are doable, if you know what I mean. Just not quite yet. But you know, I can see that I'm very slowly starting to get there. Very slowly. It may have to take some more years. It will take some more years, but sorry for the spoiler. So here I was playing against this guy. Now, it's funny because, again, I started this tournament with 1917, and this opponent of mine on round 5, the evening of the 3rd day, the last round of the tournament, he also had 1917. So our rating was exactly the same. That's just pretty funny. It doesn't happen that often, so almost never. So d4, d5, I was playing with the black pieces. Also something interesting about this tournament, 3 games with the black pieces, 2 games with the white pieces, which, you know, statistically is a little bit disadvantageous. c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, e6, he captured. Now here I can take with the knight and questioning my life choices. I can take with the c-pawn and going into a Slav defense exchange variation where black plays e6, which is considered, theoretically speaking, maybe not as good as some other moves like bishop f5, but finding a good plan for white that actually causes real problems for black, it's very difficult. So I may want to study this, but I haven't studied this, and I didn't like the fact that the bishop is behind the pawn chain. I know that's what happened also in the semi-Slav, but the semi-Slav, I'm kind of more familiar with it. So here I played e takes d5, and after bishop g5, knight b2 d7, e3, and bishop e7, we are transposing in a Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation where white already has a knight on f3 instead of going for the idea knight to e2, f3. Funnily enough, to make sure of that, I actually stood up and go on the other side of the board behind my opponent to look at the position from his perspective, and then I have to close my eyes at my place, and I'm like, I think that's the case. And I think that's the case. He played bishop d3, and here, of course, you can castle and go for the standard idea. I kind of knew this opening because I used to study from the white side, but with this plan here. But here I play knight h5, and I have no idea, by the way, what the computer is saying. Yeah, knight h5 looks like it's fine. I'm very happy to see it's one of the worst scoring moves for black. Amazing, as usual, I strike again. Unbelievable. Yeah, knight h5. No, I mean, it's fine. Then you say it's fine. Queen, bishop takes, queen takes. The idea is that you're just, you know, is the old saying that you have a lot of people in a room, you know, many pieces cramped. You can either break down a wall and make the room bigger, or you can ask a couple of people to just move out. And that's what I did with this knight h5. A couple of people, the bishops, they moved out. And now the room looks bigger. It's the same room, but it looks bigger, more space. So castle, castle. And here, very interestingly, I thought that he could play knight to e5. He played, what did he play here? Queen c2. And here, yeah, g6 is best. I thought about this move actually, but I just went back, which is not impressive at all. But what I thought he could do was knight to e5. The problem with knight e5 is that if I take, that's not good because of bishop takes h7, and then queen takes h7 with a fork picking up this piece here. And after knight e5, if I just go back, there is f4. And we spent a lot of time on this, and we thought this was not super good for white because this is weak, and all I have to do is to move this knight somewhere, not like that for sure. And then f6, and then this pawn may fall and stuff like that, but it turns out this is actually okay for white. What the computer doesn't like after knight to e5 is this move again, g6. And I told him that after the game, that I noticed that many players, they play g6 despite they don't have the dark square bishop, but now it makes so much sense to me. The idea is that you want this bishop closed, and maybe you want to throw out this knight to the d6 square, because this controls b5, so a4, b4, and b5, which is the main idea you have when you don't go for this. In this type of positions is less effective. So that's very interesting. Here knight takes d7 is considered best, bishop takes d7, and the game continues. This is equal. So he had the right feelings to not play knight e5. But I thought this was interesting, and it is interesting, it's just not good. So he was correct in that assessment. Again, just g6, and you want to reroute this knight to a much stronger square, which is d6. I play knight h to f6, again, not really impressing, and that's why you kind of start to see the evaluation going in white's favor. Here he played rook a to b1, trying to go for this minority attack, very typical. I played rook to e8, very typical as well. He played b4, all standard stuff. I played a6, and here, wow, he actually... I mean, I thought a4 was the best move, but after a4 he told me that there are moves like b5, or as I wanted to play knight to e4. I'm happy to see that the engine kind of, you know, the engine probably thinks that everything is equal, but instead he played knight d2 to kind of prevent me from playing knight to e4, and he also told me that he wanted to go with this knight to b6, so this knight is controlling e4 a little bit more. And here I play knight f8, this is very typical. He played knight a4, which is fine. And here, listen, this is the moment where I'm like, he's just gonna go here or here and then here, and then he's gonna play a4, b5, take, and this is weak, and what do I do with my life? And so I'm like, I have to attack, and I play knight g4. It's funny because this move bishop g4, that someone may say this is crazy, I actually consider it. Because bishop g4 prevents knight f3. I actually consider bishop g4. Wow. But I play knight g4, of course. And here he can play h3, and then I go back, but then, you know, I have a target. I may start to push pawns. He played knight f3 though. And I was happy to see this move because, I mean, I'm like, okay, he's kind of leaving this side of the board. And here I played h5, which the engine doesn't like too much. I mean, the position in general is better for white. And don't get me wrong, guys, like, I knew that here... My apologies, I'm getting a little bit tired. I know that here black is worst. But I have to create something. In my mind, white was about to crush me because I played so many blitz in the past where they just open things up, and then I'm just weak and I lose all the pawns, and they are like 5 against 3 and I just win the game with this pawn. And so I'm like, I have to create something, taking some risks. He played knight b6, I played rook b8, he played a4, here I played... queen d8 too, but I played queen d6. If he plays b5 now, he didn't. There is c takes b5, and I'm attacking the knight. And if he plays takes, I have takes, and I'm attacking the queen. And so here I'm able to not succumb to the insane minority attack. Let's put it this way. So he captured, I captured with the rook, with the b rook. And the engine is always saying h3, 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 and I guess that now that the bishop is gone, h3 makes a lot of sense. but he played bishop to f5, which is a move that, yeah, it surprised me at the moment, but as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I'm familiar with this pattern. I played this move myself in the past, from the white perspective, of course. Here I played rook c7, knight d7 is also something that the engine kind of likes, but I played the rook c7, and rook c7 has the idea that eventually in the future, if I manage to push those pawns, I may have some real chances against this king. So I like this move a lot. He captured, yeah, and capturing maybe is not the most correct idea, because again, now this can be a problem, and he doesn't have the knight defending anymore. He jumped in the center, that's of course what you're supposed to do. Here I just played queen e6 defending the pawn, and here he played b5, because now this is pinned. So I capture once, because that's what you do, and here I played f6. Oh, okay. That's the first disappointment of the game. Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. Oh my. Okay, so yeah, unbelievable. So in the game, I totally fixated. I played f6, and the craziest part, I played f6 because you will see in the game. The idea is that he goes here, and if I take and take, I have this move c5, and I could have played c5 now. And it makes so much sense. And it's not even that you may say, oh, but you just didn't consider it. I consider it, just not now. I consider it in a tougher variation. And the idea is that if he takes, of course, he just blunders the knight. And if he doesn't take, I'm just pushing. No, this is unbelievable. This c5 is just amazing. And the engine already is saying, yeah, black all of a sudden is kind of back in the game. But this is super dangerous. If white makes something wrong, it's just... Wow, c5, such an obvious move, and I totally missed it, and my opponent missed it too. Like, he was chilling. After b5, he was chilling. Sorry, after he takes b5, he was chilling. I was chilling, I just played f6. He went to g6, knight takes g6, queen takes g6, I played c5, and yes, I'm happy to see that these moves are correct, of course, but like, c5 immediately was a different story, definitely. And here again, the problem is that white cannot just look. Like, if he plays something like that, I push. And all of a sudden, black has these connected passed pawns, and the structure is complex. This queen is unbelievably enough, taking care of everything. So d takes c5, rook takes c5, but the problem is that now, yeah, my pawn structure is fragmented, but this pawn is weak. And I may be able to play d4, and if I trade these pawns, I'm fine. And then my pieces start to get active. He played rook b4, hitting this pawn. I played rook c4. I wanted to play rook c4 anyways, so I played it. He went queen b1. And here, yeah, queen e4 I saw, but I prefer to play doubling up the rooks. And here I offered a draw. I'm like, what about draw, right? I asked draw. And, you know, he had the same rating as me. I calculated that if we draw, it's 0 points each. So I was earning rating points from this tournament. So I'm like, if I draw, I'm fine. And I was very tired, and I didn't really know how to evaluate this position. After rook e to c8, I genuinely believed that this was equal, because he was slightly better basically the whole game, but here I started to get active. I'm happy to see that this is actually equal, because if I offer the draw in an inferior position, I don't like it, because it looks like I'm trying to bail out the draw. This is something that I personally don't like to do. It's a personal thing. There are people who do that and they consider it normal strategy. It's all fair and fair, right? But me personally, I like to ask the draw if I really think that it's equal. Maybe it's confusing, which it is, but equal. And I'm happy to see that that's the case. My opponent thought for a while, but then he accepted it. So yeah, it ended in a draw. Very, very nice. So this tournament, I ended it with, let me make some 1, 2, 3. 3 out of 5, I gain rating points. Now this guy is not classified. Again, if you count that guy, I should have made 5 rating points, so going above 1920. And if you don't count the guy, I should have made 2 to 3 points. So I don't know if I get to 1920 or 1919. In any case, I made like 2 to 5 points. I'm happy about that. But most importantly, guys, let me show you something important. And let me click this freaking button. So since this is the regional championship, it works as a qualifier for the Italian semifinals championship, the Italian individual championships, which is big. And I got the qualifications. That's my name right there. And I actually participated in this tournament for this reason. And I barely made it. But I did. I think the last spot of the people that can qualify, I made it, but still. And very happy about that. From the 21st to the 28th of July 2024. And that's gonna be pretty cool. Now, I plan to do it. I want to do it. You never know what can happen in life. And that's why I said that it may not pass too much time until I play another Master, because this is a super strong tournament. You either qualify because you play this type of championship, and my region is very small, so it's relatively easy to qualify. But 90% of other players are like Masters, basically, and above. So tough tournament, but I'll get crushed, of course, but I'll make a ton of experience. And yeah, if the logistics and everything works out, I'll definitely do it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this. Enjoy your chess.